It's been 8,535 days since we last got Halo Infinite news, and that news was the announcement of the delay. There are so many unanswered questions. Is it truly open world? Can you customize your Spartan penis like Cyberpunk? And most importantly, will Craig be the final boss? I've been searching the web for any drop of the slightest bit of information, explored the most dangerous jungles for any sign, but alas, nothing. But what to do? In the meantime, what? No. Not again. Not again. Ah, screw it. The end of an era can be described in many ways. A good thing, a bad thing, a great thing to look back at, or a hard thing to move forward from. Regardless though, Halo had made its statement. Its run through the 6th console generation can be described as nothing short of a complete success. It redefined what we thought about shooters and the platform they were on. It introduced a dedicated online community and set the precedent on how future shooters would be designed with online play in mind, and gave players the opportunity to experience a unique story that twists the way you know about storytelling and succeeds in making relatable characters and heart-stopping events. Halo was on the high road to success, and it was about to reach its destination. But as with all great things, they must come to an end. Halo clearly wasn't done, and it needed something to end off the series on a note where players would be left completely satisfied. The 7th console generation was out, and it was time to finish the fight. Halo 3. The end of an era. One final effort is all that remained to finish off the trilogy in such a perfect way. Hello everyone and welcome back to GameTalk, where we talk about games. Before we start though, check out the reviews for Halo 1 and 2. You watched them? You ready? Okay, now that the normies are gone, let's discuss my love for Fortnite fanfiction. Halo Combat Evolved put the Xbox on the map, and it introduced a new way shooters would be designed. Halo 2 improved on the areas that Halo 1 fell short and created a path for future online play on consoles. But before we find out if Halo 3 buttered the toast or stuck a fork in the toaster, what else was there to do? Looking at things from an unknowing perspective, Bungie now had the time and resources to make this final project right. We've seen them learn from their mistakes and we know what they're capable of. So could Halo 3 be an example of learning from previous mistakes and moving forward? Could Halo 3 be a perfect game? Will Halo 3 be a perfect game? Halo 2 left a bad taste in people's mouths. The game was really good, iconic, and revolutionary. But the campaign ended off on such a sudden note during the lead up to a series of events that would conclude the story, resulting in a to-be-continued style cliffhanger ending, resulting in me wanting to travel to the year 2552 and giving a massive backhander to Master Chief and throwing Cortana's AI chip into the sun. Its ending is quite infamous for being terrible. Look up articles or videos listing bad video game endings and it wouldn't be hard to find Halo 2 there. I can forgive it, to some extent. When learning that, it wasn't because of poor writing or marketing for the next game, but since Halo 2's development was a complete mess and so rushed, the final act of the game ended up being cut, resulting in the poor ending we got. So I'm currently optimistic for Halo 3. This means that this final act of Halo 2 will now be more polished and more time will be spent on it, hopefully giving the players an ending they deserve, or you know, just taking a huge dump in your potato salad. I don't want to waste too much time though, so get ready, get set, and you better keep those socks on. First of all, I'm a sex offender. The menu. Better than Halo 2's, but not as great as Halo 1's. This time around, we see the Prophet of Truth ship in a crater on Earth with a huge storm cloud above it. And for the very first time, we actually hear background sound effects in the menu, such as thunder crackling in the distance, ships and aircrafts flying past, a chilling wind blowing ever so slightly. I do like this as once again it falls under that mysteriousness category. Why is there a specifically large storm cloud above a specifically huge crater, and in this crater rests a ship made with ancient technology? It's mysterious, and the only way to find out what it is to launch the campaign. And before I drink myself silly again, we better start. Halo 3 picks up exactly where Halo 2 left off. We have a shot from Earth looking into the night sky where we see a meteor-like object falling from space. We get a monologue from Cortana, explaining why she chose Master Chief as the Spartan she would be the advisor/assistant of during combat. She says it wasn't for how strong or smart or brave he was, as all the other Spartans had those qualities as well. But there was something she saw in him, something that no one else did.
Can you guess? Luck.
As we see a smaller meteor detach from the larger one and crash land near the area of the camera angle. It cuts to Sergeant Johnson and his squadron overseeing the landing zone, where we find out that the meteor object was the Prophet of Truth ship at the end of the last game, and the smaller meteor was Master Chief in an escape pod. Despite being possibly injured, Master Chief gets up and we get reminded that Cortana isn't with us as we left her in high charity system.
Where's Cortana?
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
She stayed behind.
Corporal, make it quick. Pete, wait! The Arbiter's with us!
Yeah, the Arbiter is on the human side now, alongside the rest of the elites, which should definitely change up how gameplay is structured. The current objective, distance ourselves from the crash site and eliminate any immediate Covenant forces. And even quicker than Halo 2, we're into gameplay, and it's time to fucking party. Now, how does Halo 3's gameplay differ? Yeah, not gonna lie, from 2004 to 2007, this game acts in practically the same way gameplay-wise. I do like the sleeker UI, and the positioning of the shield meter is definitely easier to see than the rest of the trilogy. Movement and momentum is exactly the same as before, but I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Halo 2's movement and momentum system worked, and they've kept it that way. Difficulty balancing has been improved, and this is a big relief. There are 4 difficulty modes: easy, normal, heroic, and legendary. Halo 1 and 2 had these difficulty options as well, but the reason I want to talk about it now is how the balancing between each difficulty is a lot better now. Legendary difficulty in Halo 2 was so unfair and frustrating that it can be downright sadistic at times. Don't believe me? Launch the level Gravemind on legendary difficulty in Halo 2 and stay alive for more than 2 seconds. It's practically impossible. Just like how in the bedroom, I won't be able to last 2 seconds either. Here, legendary difficulty is tough, but more importantly, is fair. You just have to take a more slow and methodical approach to each situation, which makes playing on this difficulty fun, and that is one of the most important things when designing a video game. One pretty big change is that the Arbiter, instead of being a secondary main character that's playable, he acts as the trusty sidekick to Master Chief in this game, which does suck because playing as the Arbiter in Halo 2 with his active camo ability was a cool change of pace. But here, Arbiter won't be always fighting alongside you, but will be with you for the majority of the game, and unlike the Marines, he isn't absolutely unequivocally useless. His health is quite high, and when taking a lot of damage, Arbiter will pull out an energy sword, which can help you quite a bit if you're getting overwhelmed by enemies. But I just half lied to you. Arbiter is actually playable in co-op campaign only. Whether you're playing co-op online, which is a new feature, or split screen, player 2 will play as the Arbiter. Unfortunately, he doesn't have active camo, but will start missions with his own weapon loadouts separate to Master Chief, which is cool. Naturally, some new vehicles have been added to spice up the vehicular gameplay. We have the Brute Chopper, which is one of the more unique and interesting vehicles in Halo, but only appears in Halo 3, which is disappointing. It's like the Ghost, having more of that hover bike aesthetic, and acts pretty similar to the Ghost as well. But what separates it from the Ghost is that boosting into another vehicle will tear right through it. Something that encourages you to get close to the action, risking your life, but delivers a high payout. High risk, high reward, and it's great. The Brute Prowler, which replaced the Spectre from Halo 2, and is exactly the same. It just doesn't boost.
Well, this sucks.
The Hornet, which is the Banshee counterpart with the UNSC human aesthetic. It doesn't have the Banshee's evade features, but does have lock-on powerful missiles and extremely accurate machine gun turrets to compensate. And I also want to go over the Scarab. It did appear briefly in Halo 2, but in a few levels throughout Halo 3, you will have a boss fight against the Scarab tank. These things will fire beams annihilating anything in its path, and if it stomps on you, Well, hope you like mashed potatoes. The way to take these things down is to use heavy weaponry against its joints, making it temporarily immobile, but that can be pretty hard to do with ground troops constantly attacking you. You can also find hidden areas to surprise attack and board it. When you're inside, you destroy its core and witness the glory of its explosion. Ah, who needs sex when you have that? A new addition to Halo 3 is the various types of equipment that can be found in the battlefield and used in combat. Things that can assist you, hinder the enemies, or both at the same time. A few examples would be the bubble shield, which protects the player and AI from all angles from bullets, plasma, and explosions, but enemies are able to enter this protective zone. The power drain, which will act as an EMP in a specific radius. You or any enemy in that radius will have their shields temporarily disabled, and vehicles in that radius will be temporarily immobile. Gravity lifts that can allow you to get the high ground over enemies, plus many more like deployable covers, health regenerators, trip mines, etc. And even enemies can use any piece of equipment against you as well. It adds that extra kick, something that acts novelty, but can be used as strategy, just like dual wielding did in Halo 2. Okay, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, and no, it's not me, and yes, I know I'm fat. The visuals. Now, obviously, there was going to be a drastic visual increase, as this game is an Xbox 360 game, and Halo 2 was an Xbox Classic game. But regardless, I don't know what kind of voodoo witchcraft shit Bungie pulled on this one, but this game looks stunning. The cutscenes, meh. The character models, yeah. But the environments, ooh. And the lighting, oh! For a game that came out in 2007, the early era of the 7th console generation, Halo 3's environment and lighting makes Halo 2 look like the levels were made with Play-Doh and Legos. If I had never seen Halo 3 before and you told me it was ray traced, I'd believe you. The lighting gives the character models a shine, making them pop. The muzzle flash of your guns illuminate the guns themselves and will glow the surrounding area. The game is aesthetically pleasing and it's great to look at. Almost as great to look at as, now we have to address the main selling point of a first-person shooter. The gunplay. Now, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, shooting enemies is as satisfying as it's ever been. The effects, the sounds, the explosion particles, it's all there, and it's amazing. But my problem comes with the balancing of each weapon. Halo 2 made every weapon a viable choice, but Halo 3 kind of limits that. While every weapon in the game is fun and satisfying to use, most are not necessary to use. The game is centered around the battle rifle and carbine. These two mid-range weapons can power through practically any enemy, and I found myself constantly going back to these two weapons for how useful they were. I mean, weapons are allowed to be useful, but think back to Doom, the holy grail of FPSs. Why I think this game still to this day is one of the best first-person shooters ever is that each weapon is of value at every part of the game. They all differ from each other, they all serve their purpose. There aren't just guns for the sake of having guns, but each of them acts as a tool for survival. Halo 1 and 2 for the most part followed this. Every weapon served their purpose. Sure, some would be very similar to others, but there would be novelty if you preferred human-style weapons or alien-style weapons. Here the game almost encourages you to stick with the same weapons. The battle rifle or carbine, and any power weapon. You can use any of the others and they're good, no doubt, but they're not as useful as each other, and you'll find yourself constantly going back to the weapons you can trust. But it's not all bad though. Improvements have been made to the gunplay aside from how satisfying it is. Dual wielding has been fixed and balanced. Weapons like the Needler is no longer dual wieldable as it was a bit too overpowered in Halo 2, to say the least. Using two Needlers against the Grunt is literally a direct comparison to a point-blank shotgun shot to a harmless fucking butterfly. In Halo 3, the Needler on its own here is a bit more deadly than before, to compensate for not being able to double up. Another neat fix to dual wielding is that your left and right gun can be reloaded at any time you want, as there are two button binds to do so. In Halo 2, your reload button would force a reload on both your guns, but here, if one of your guns has practically a full mag and the other doesn't, or if you want to suppress fire on one gun while reloading the other, you can do that. Even standing turrets have been improved. Whether it be the plasma or machine gun turret, these things would act as a powerhouse from a singular location, but now they can be detached. It seems overpowered, but while holding these heavy weapons, throwing grenades, crouching, switching weapons is disabled, alongside your movement being slowed down. I also want to mention the Magnum Pistol, a good tool in Halo 2 but lacking something, and that something was added here. The Plasma Pistol can still be a low damage suppression tool, but an overcharged EMP shot will not only take down enemy shields instantly, but can now EMP vehicles to stop them in their tracks, giving you an opportunity to board or hijack them. Now being stranded in a vehicular war zone isn't a death sentence anymore, and does put that strategy element into being a badass. Though I don't know what the hell happened to the Magnum Pistol. Halo 1's pistol was a mid-range powerhouse with a low fire rate. Halo 2's would decrease the range, accuracy, and damage for a faster fire rate, being exceptionally useful in a dual-wield scenario. They've gone back to the low rate of fire and high damage in Halo 3, but now it's the most useless weapon in the game. The accuracy and range on this thing makes it useless in every combat situation, even if you choose to dual-wield it. I used the pistol at the very start of the game, and I refuse to use it at any other point in the game. The weapon is even hopeless against grunts. Fucking grunts. I'd rather use all my energy to summon Hulk Hogan to leg drop all the Covenant. As with all Halo games, new weapons have been added. The assault rifle from Halo 1 has made its return after being absent in Halo 2. However, since the magazine size has been decreased by 28 rounds, damage has been increased, which makes the assault rifle the power style fully auto weapon, and makes the SMG the more chaotic suppression fully auto weapon. A new human power weapon has been added, the Spartan laser. This thing, while taking its time to charge up, will fire a devastating laser shot that can plow through any enemy or any vehicle in one hit. Sounds overpowered, I know, but you only have very few moments in the campaign where you have the opportunity, no, the honor of using this thing. Initially as a kid, I thought this thing was useless. I was holding down the trigger like, what the hell is this thing? Why is it doing no damage? Since the elites are no longer enemies and Bungie have taken a focus on the brutes, weapons have been added in relation to their design. The brute spiker, which is an interesting but all in all underused and lost potential weapon. It has a bayonet blade for melee damage and will shoot heated spikes in a fully auto manner. While that sounds cool, it's basically the assault rifle with less accuracy and range, but is dual wieldable. The Maula, which is one of the best weapons ever added into the series, and sadly only appears in Halo 3. It's a revolver-style shotgun with extremely low range, but from point blank, this weapon will annihilate anything in its path. And that's what I love. It's powerful, yet only can be utilized at a short range, making it a high-risk, high-reward weapon. The energy sword, while still present, has a brute counterpart, the gravity hammer. Used by brute chieftains, the gravity hammer is like the sword being a melee-only weapon, but will trade out its lunge range for an explosive impact, blasting any surrounding enemy, and anything you directly hit will usually be killed. I mentioned this briefly before, but heavy weapons have been added like the detachable turrets. However, there are two more available. The missile pod, which is a homing missile launcher, which is the Halo noob tube, and the flamethrower, which was in Halo 1 PC multiplayer, but is here as a heavy weapon, and is very short range, but does immensely high and lasting damage to enemies, but mostly yourself. Halo 3 doesn't actually add new enemies. Of course there are new enemy types, but we've already been introduced to the Covenant, and while it may seem upsetting at first that there aren't any new faces to the party, I actually think it's a good decision on Bungie's behalf, as you don't want to oversaturate anything. But as the console generation has increased, of course the enemies look fantastic. What I especially love is that the Grunt's methane tanks can be shot off now, and creates cool particle effects and explosions. Jackal and Brute shields will explode and spark up when destroyed. Hunter armor can be destroyed on their back, breaking into pieces and widening up their weak spots. Flood are as disgusting and more dilapidated as ever. Each of their body parts can be shot off and they can literally fall apart after taking too much damage. The Flood are also way more terrifying, alongside a new Flood form called the Pure form, which can transform from spider-like creatures to things that attack you from walls to these tank-like creatures. The Flood actually speaks now, and it's horrifying.
Consider the armored casket.
Elites no longer appear as enemies, and us humans and their species, the Sangheli, are at a truce, and they will fight alongside you in a few missions here and there, giving more of an emotional bond between our species and theirs. But since the elites were technically the main troops of the Covenant, Halo 3 gives a larger focus on the brutes. Brutes, while not as vicious and aggressive as Halo 2, are now the Prophets, Protectors, and the mainline troopers of the Covenant. You'll find them leading infantry soldier groups like Grunts and Jackals. They have strong energy shields above their armor, making them hard to take down. Taking down their shields will cause them to berserk. They aren't as fast as they were whilst berserk in Halo 2, but when berserk, their movement is much more sporadic and unpredictable. They have different ranks like the Minor, Major, Captain, and various others, which will act in the same way, but will vary in health and design. But some unique brutes are the Jump Pack Brutes, which can get the high ground over you by using their, well, jump pack. What do you think I was gonna say? They can get the high ground over you by using the power of the Holy Bible. You then have the Brute Chieftains and the War Chieftains, the toughest of the tough and the leaders of their pack. They wield fuel rod guns, plasma cannons, or gravity hammers, and their health is extremely high, accompanied by the fact that they have an armor ability, granting them temporary invincibility. These tough sons of bitches will give you a run for your money, and can use their hammers to whack you off and... wait, that didn't sound right. Halo 3's story is special. The sheer experience of it is fantastic, and the events are heart-stopping. It kind of mashes itself together with Halo 2's though. We know the characters, we know the enemies, and we know what these giant space hula hoops are, so Halo 3 focuses on the events mainly. Throughout the Halo trilogy, I've noticed that each game has a specific focus point, something a part of the story that Bungie focused on the most to keep the player most interested. Halo 1's focus point was, of course, well, Halo and the Flood. What exactly is this thing floating through space, and how dangerous is this plague-like threat to our species? Halo 2 was the Arbiter and the fall of the Covenant, showing how the Arbiter was a relatable character and how his whole life was a complete lie, fabricated by the leaders of his faction. But Halo 3 is Cortana. She almost seemed like a somewhat main character in the other Halo games. When playing as the Master Chief, she was always with you, giving you advice, calling for supplies and transport, and while Master Chief was the strength of the situation, she was the brains of the situation. But she's not with you in Halo 3, we left her in High Charity in Halo 2, and as the Flood took over the Holy City, she stayed. Though while Cortana isn't with you for the majority of the game, weird events occur in every mission. Occasionally, Master Chief will slow down to almost a complete stop, and his vital signs would shut. He'd hallucinate what seems to be memories of what Cortana has told him in the past.
You will become the best we can make you. Could you sacrifice me to complete your mission? Could you watch me die?
But as the game goes on, they start to sound less like memories and more like cryptic real-time messages.
Chief, I can't trust you. It's not safe. The grave mind, it knows.
Well, in the story, the Prophet of Truth activates all Halo rings from a place called the Ark, briefly mentioned in Halo 2's ending, and all life and our knowledge of existence itself would cease to exist. The Arbiter and Master Chief, though, are at the very entrance to the Ark Citadel, and stopping the ring seems like an almost impossible task, until...
Do not shoot, but listen. Let me lead you safely to our foe. Only you can halt what he has set in motion.
The Flood, while they can't stop the activation sequence themselves, out of desperation and knowing their survival is at stake, escort the iconic duo to the activation panel to stop what the Prophet has started. So we kill the Prophet, stop the rings, and get backstabbed by the Flood. The Flood's starting to remind me of Nintendo. After escaping the Citadel, emerging from the Ark's core, we see Halo, the Halo ring from the first game, reconstructed and rebirthed by the Ark. If the army of Flood is here, we can activate it, go back through the portal to Earth, and not worry about the Flood ever again. But the only way to activate it is with the Index, which Cortana still has from the very first game. So we scavenge our way through the dilapidated and Flood overtaken High Charity, we find Cortana in a very damaged state, and what do you know? She still has it, the Index, and there's only one more thing to do. Which leads us to the very final mission, Halo. The mission at the start of Halo 1 where we landed on Halo was called Halo, and the final mission of the trilogy, where we leave it for good, is called Halo. The humans and elites head back for Earth, while Master Chief, Arbiter, Cortana, and Sergeant Johnson head for the control room of this newly birthed Halo ring to activate it and stop the Flood once and for all.
Halo. It's so new, unfinished. I'm not exactly sure what will happen when we fire it.
We'll head for the portal. That will all go home.
Throughout the mission, Flood will continuously come from dispersal pods as you make your way up to the control room, and they will do anything to stop you from activating Halo. So the fight to the top of the control room tower is no easy task. Neither is putting 15 socks in your mouth, but hey, that didn't stop me. Upon entering the control room, Master Chief and Arbiter hold the door while Johnson takes Cortana to activate Halo. The monitor tells us that the ring should be ready to fire in just a few more days.
We don't have a few more days.
But a premature firing will destroy the Ark.
Deal with it.
Will destroy this installation.
Unacceptable!
Unacceptable! Absolutely unacceptable!
The monitor betrays us again. There's no way we can wait, so we destroy the monitor, and Johnson gives us his final request.
Send me out. With a bang.
And for the first time, we activate Halo. Cortana was right though. The ring is so new and unfinished that the ring will be able to fire, but as soon as the activation sequence starts, the ring starts ripping itself apart. The only hope now is to get back to the UNSC Forward Unto Dawn ship and go home before Halo kills us all. The ring starts to violently shake as Master Chief and Arbiter scale the cliff walls and enter Halo's interior, and upon getting outside again, there's one saving grace: Sergeant Johnson's Warthog.
Come on, Spartan, go, go, go!
This final part of the game is absolutely perfect. It got that really badass escape sequence at the end of the first game and turned that shit up to 11. Driving on the unfinished section of Halo while each platform continuously explodes around you. Structures and pillars not being able to hold their own weight and collapsing. The ring violently shaking and getting more aggressive as time moves forward. And accompanied by the track Greatest Journey, a remix of Halo's theme song containing that iconic monk chant and the piano style to the theme representing that this is the end. As Master Chief and the Arbiter make it to the frigate, it launches and Halo fires as they head to the portal.
If we don't make it,
We'll make it.
it's been an honor serving with you, John.
The final cutscene of the game shows Lord Hood giving a speech at a war memorial, explaining that the war is over and we shall never forget the heroes fallen. Through the speech, we see flashes of half the ship Master Chief and Arbiter on make it back to Earth. As Arbiter attends the memorial service, we don't see Chief here at all, but Lord Hood thanks the Arbiter for standing by him to the end, saying specifically,
Hard to believe he's dead. Were it so easy?
Arbiter and the rest of his species reminisce about the war, and after many long years they head back to the home planet of Sanghelios, and the game ends on this shot. Master Chief has died. I can't explain to you how distraught I was when I saw this specific shot as a kid. My hero had died. The person I was growing up with was no more, and honestly, this is a perfect ending. Not happy, but not sad either. It's happy because the war is over, humans can rest, and the elites go home. But melancholy because the man responsible for this resting period of humanity is no longer with them.
Chief? Can you hear me? I thought I'd lost you too.
Well, here's something that I didn't know until about 5 years after I played Halo 3. If you played the game on Legendary difficulty, you'll get an extra ending cutscene where Master Chief is in fact alive. While the front half of the ship made it through the portal, the other half made it through as the portal collapsed. Now, they're just floating in deep space in an unknown location. With no other option, Master Chief puts Cortana into the ship's system, while he puts himself into a stasis.
I'll drop a beacon, but it'll be a while before anyone finds us. Years, even. I miss you.
Wake me when you need me.
And this is where the whole story ends. It's kind of open-minded as well. What does "wake me when you need me" mean? Well, the way I interpret it is that maybe the ship will eventually lose all its backup power and Cortana will shut down. Maybe Cortana needs to wake up the Master Chief as she doesn't want to die alone. There's many ways you can interpret this, but in my eyes it's a perfect ending. Somewhat happy, somewhat sad, but mostly open-minded. I'm honestly speechless. I mean, well, what a game. There are a few things that could have been improved upon, like the weapon balancing, and there are only 9 playable missions in this game that, to be fair, do drag out for a while. But this was one of the best experiences I've had in gaming ever, and it takes a lot for me to say that. The gameplay itself was really good with massive replayability, let alone the story. I had myself in tears from the sheer experience alone. The jaw-dropping and heart-stopping events, the characters we've come to know and love meeting their demise, the way that the music in every part of the level, including cutscenes, fits so well to make such an immersive experience is absolutely fantastic. The voice acting is so real and the score is nothing short of special. The only other criticism I have with the game is that the facial animation and the character models definitely need some work done, but aside from those visuals, the in-game visuals and the environments is nothing short of spectacular for the time. Nevertheless though, Halo 3 makes the good list and gets a 9 out of 10. And with that, Halo 3 lives on. Being the most sold game of 2007 and the third most sold game on the Xbox 360 with 14.5 million sales, this game made a mark for itself as I'd say the best FPS of the 7th console generation. Up there with Battlefield 3, Borderlands 2 and Call of Duty Black Ops. Halo 3 is a game for the ages, and it shows because, believe it or not, Halo 3 servers 13 years later are still up and running. And I don't mean the Master Chief Collection on Xbox One and PC, no. Fire up Halo 3 on Xbox 360. The servers are still somehow up. I did mention that the campaign felt a bit short, but it does compensate for that with local and online multiplayer, which is now more balanced and more stable, fully customizable armor for Spartans and Elites, theater mode has been added to look over multiplayer and even campaign games, and Forge mode has been added, for you not only to edit multiplayer maps, but completely create maps and game modes for multiplayer. And that's pretty much it. The Halo trilogy ends there. The fight is finished. And with that, it has spawned one of the biggest franchises in gaming ever, with sequels, prequels, side stories, remasters, collections, and the series continues with upcoming releases and content overhauls for previous releases. But it is a bit hard to move forward from. After Halo 3, Halo fans have been noticing a downturn in the quality of these games. I personally wouldn't say they're particularly bad overall, but definitely disappointing when compared to the series' peak. And it is upsetting to see how at the top this series was to now where the community constantly berates everything these new developers do. Halo is at a weird point now, and a lot of the fans have departed from the series, and most so desperate to want the series to return to its original style. That is why Halo 3 is hard to move forward from, but I'm gonna end this video on a Dr. Seuss quote for those who feel the same way. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Alright, if you're listening to this, comment, Craig is smiling because it happened. That way I'll know you've watched all the way through. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. I've had a blast revisiting the Halo trilogy and I plan to get to the other Halo games soon, but for now I'm all Halo'd out. If you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like and subscribe with those notifications on so you know when I upload next. Thank you all so much once again, and I will talk to you before you know it. See you later.